Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Hello, all my Foxy listeners. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know, one of the things I love the most about my career is that I can do it no matter where I am. And I am so passionate about podcasting that even when I'm on vacation, I have to skip away a little bit of time to be able to do some interviews, especially when it's guests like today's. I am so excited, mainly because I've been listening to Hayley's podcasts for a while now, and I've just gotten so much out of them. So when I reached out to her and asked her if she would be a guest and she agreed, I was over the moon excited because now I get to share her with all of my Foxy listeners. So as a speaker and a coach, Hayley loves to empower women to take steps towards big dreams and a better life. She's a serial entrepreneur, which is something you all know I can relate to very much. But she's also a big dreamer who took a hobby wedding business born out of a college dorm room and created a multi-business empire that runs on hard work and her favorite, Dr. Pepper. Through her speaking, business, and passion project, the Females on Fire podcast, she spends her days in her pink office creating content and resources to help women turn their what-ifs into tangible realities. So Hayley, thank you so much for taking time to join me on the show today.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited for all of my listeners to learn a little bit more about you. So can you tell us a little bit about your story, like how it all started and then like where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started with wedding planning in college. It just it's a long story, but it just sort of happened. And I got to this place where I was in my last year of school, and long story short, my financial aid got cut. And so I wasn't going to be able to finish because I couldn't afford it. And a few other things happened. And I just found myself kind of feeling like I was at rock bottom, and ultimately was like, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I've got to make money. I've got to pay my bills. I need something that I can make into a career, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. And so I had planned a lot of parties and just social events and things like that for some of my friends and their sororities, and was kind of helping a few of them with their upcoming weddings. And it just resulted in me kind of looking at it saying, okay, here's something that I feel like I'm good at. And, I can help my friends out with it and kind of turn it into a little business for right now until I figure out what else I'm going to do.
Right.
And it ended up taking off. I had friends that would hire me, and then they would refer their friends, and their moms would tell other moms, and it turned into this big thing. And about a year in, I realized like, oh, this is really a business. Like, I'm running a
Right.
business. And so all of a sudden it became like, okay, I need to learn how to run a business and not just plan weddings. And so I was, fresh out of college basically, and had my own wedding planning business, and it went really well, and I really enjoyed it. But I found myself a little over 2 years in, really with a lot of extra time on my hands. It wasn't that I didn't have enough clients, because I definitely did, but we just had things running pretty smoothly. I had, my packages planned out. I knew exactly what was included for everybody and exactly how many meetings I had to go to. And I've always just been super organized and really efficient. And so I found myself with a lot of time where in the middle of the day, I was watching Netflix, and
Right.
that's never good. That's never good. So I started kind of playing around with the idea of helping some other wedding professionals that I knew out with the business side of their business, because that's the part that I really enjoyed, even more so than planning weddings.
Right.
And I tested it out on a few friends of mine, and they just really loved it. They're like, you should definitely make this a business. And I talked to my husband. He was all for it. And so I took a chance and opened a virtual assistant company. And this was kind of back before everybody was opening a virtual assistant company. And
Yes, it's very
before it,
popular.
yeah, before it was kind of the cool thing to do. So I had no idea what that looked like. And I didn't really have anybody I knew personally that I could kind of ask those questions to. So it really felt like starting over, a lot of Googling, like, okay, now how do I run this type of business? And how do I work with these types of clients? Because it was so different from wedding planning. And now that was about 3 years ago. And we've really transitioned that virtual assistant company into more of a digital marketing agency. I quit doing weddings a few months ago. It was finally time to let it go, which was a little bittersweet because that was my business baby. But I'm pushing 6 years in on running my own businesses now, and I do coaching, I run a podcast, and have getting into speaking, and ended up doing a lot of motivational speaking, and really found that that was where my heart was. And I loved just getting the kind of share my story and share some inspiration and what's worked for me and what hasn't to other business owners and other women. And it's just been a really crazy journey, but it's been really exciting and just so much fun.
So do you find, like, I found when I started my first business, I kind of had that and that was it. And then when I started adding more in, because of course you say that you're a serial entrepreneur, do you
Yeah.
find it's kind of like when those people, when they say, well, after you're like this third kid, they just kind of keep coming. Like,
Yeah.
because I find myself like all of a sudden these opportunities will show up to me and I'm like, oh, I could do that really well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you get to a place where you just get so excited about everything. Like in the beginning, you're so focused on, okay, I need to learn how to file my taxes as a business owner, and I've got to learn how to track my time and how to price my services. And you're so focused on those little meticulous details that you're not really like thinking outside the box. You're not trying to be creative and come up with new services or products or ideas. And once you get past that point and you feel like, okay, I know how to run a business, I've been doing this for a while, I'm pretty good at it, you start getting into that more kind of creative side. Even if you're not creative, the ideas just kind of come. And when they
Yeah.
do, you think they're the best ones in the world. They first hit you and you're like, this is awesome. Like, this is the thing that's going to make me like a millionaire. And it's usually not that great of an idea.
No.
But every once in a while, you find one that's kind of a diamond in the rough, and you're like, "Hey, I could add this. I could do this. This would be cool. This would make a great second business or an extra service or whatever." And so, yeah, I do think that's definitely true. I think once you've got like two or three different, not even businesses, but just sort of different things that you're involved in or that you're doing, all of a sudden it becomes one of those things that just sort of spirals out of control sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been like that too. We've had times where we were, up to 5 and I was thinking, oh
Yeah.
my God, what are we doing? But I find too, the older I get, the more I'm willing to sort of let them go. Like I grow them and then I'm like, here, you have it. Like
Oh, yeah.
I'm done
Absolutely.
with this now. I'm growing it. But I find, yeah, I love that creativity. I love that passion. It's sort of like when you first meet somebody. Like I find that businesses are like that starting relationship where it's all exciting and you get
Oh,
to,
yeah.
really create it. So if you like think back in the past, what is something like that you did that's sort of like your biggest success story, or the one that that just holds a special place in your heart?
Yeah. So, gosh, that's kind of a hard question
I
because
know.
I feel like just that very first one, just being willing to take the risk and say, okay, yeah, I can turn this into a business, even though it's sort of, I don't want to say it fell in my lap because I worked really hard for it, but I didn't know that was going to be the thing that started me in the business world that, really became my first business. But I think just being able to kind of say, okay, this is working. I am good at this. I'm going to try it. And then
Yeah.
when it did start working, to say, okay, I'm going to pursue it. I think that to me was the thing that made all the difference for me. The one that I would have to say holds the biggest place in my heart, though, is definitely starting my podcast, because that for me was just a passion project.
Yeah.
Um, I think the main reason I started it was literally because being a business owner gets lonely. And, I'm sitting there all day, and my main source of communication with other people is Instagram stories.
Yep.
Yeah. And you just get to a point where you're kind of like, gosh, I've got to make some friends, or I've got to talk to someone human, because I'm spending way too much time talking to my dog.
Yeah.
And that's the place that I got to, because, if you work from home, you're home alone all day. And, my husband would come home at the end of the day and he's like, how was your day? And I'd tell him like every little detail. And he's like, okay, yeah, that's great. Oh, the story's not over? Great. Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, I need friends. I need somebody I can talk. I need a human adult person that understands what I'm going through, that I can talk to during the day. And that's hard to find. And I've got some great business friends, but they're busy. They're running a business. And so for me, starting that podcast just gave me the opportunity to sit down with somebody every week and just pick something in business that we could talk about together. And it didn't have to be, sharing our life stories and talking about, all the wonders of the universe. It didn't have to be that sort of thing, but we can sit down and have a conversation about email marketing. And it sufficiently was filling that void for me of not having human interaction during the day. And so for me, the podcast for sure has been the biggest like game changer as far as holding a place in my heart, and because it definitely started as a passion project.
Yeah. And I love it too. One of the things I love about your podcast is that you're honest with stuff, about failures and stuff. And that holds true to me because I've seen it so much, especially when I owned retail businesses and stuff, that nobody would share those struggles. Nobody would say, yeah, like I'm hurting too, or it's tough. And I thought that was a real barrier, because I thought we could do so much collaboration and we could do so much, but you just need to tell me you need help. And
Exactly.
I'm totally willing to help, and it's not going to cost you anything, because I just love doing it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I totally get it. And I was getting closed off too. So I was like, I'm turning into a hermit. And
Yep.
same thing. I was, my husband was like, I just asked you how you were 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
But he was my source he was the only one who kind of talked back. Not that I gave him a chance to.
Right. Exactly.
But it was, and I mean, I'm fortunate. It sounds like you are too, that I can come home. I've come home with some pretty harebrained schemes, and he's like, okay, whatever. Like,
Yep.
Just go with it. He knows better. I think he just knows better now to just let me go.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah,
I figure it out before it gets too late. If I'm like, this is a good idea.
Yeah. And I'm super fortunate. I could not be happier with the fact that my husband is so supportive. And I started the wedding planning business kind of right when me and my husband started dating. So he didn't get too much of a say in that, but I came to him, 2 years later, and I was like, I think I want to start a second business. And he went, okay, what's that going to look like? And I'm like, I have no idea, but let's do it. And he's like, okay, we're excited. Let's go. And I mean, he's been so supportive, and yeah, I'll come home. I can always tell when he thinks it's a good idea or not, because if he comes home and he's like, how was your day? And I'm like, I've got this idea and it's awesome, and here's everything about it. He'll do one of two things. He either goes, oh, that sounds cool, you should try that, I can't wait to hear how it works out, which means he does not think it's a good idea at all, but he's super supportive. If he thinks it's a good idea, all of a sudden he's like planning with me. He's like, well, what if you did this? And what if you added this? And so that's how I know. But it just, if it's not a good idea, he does. He's just super supportive. He lets me run with it. And at some point he knows that it'll just kind of falter out.
Yeah.
I'll go, okay, that one didn't work out, and we're moving on now. We're not going to talk about it anymore.
It's just a lesson. I need to learn that.
Well,
yeah. And when I came home to my husband, tell him I wanted to start a podcast, he's not even on Facebook. He does not do social media, never has, just has no desire to it. So I was like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. And he's like, what's a podcast? And I'm like, it's talking. And I'm like, it's just like talking. And he's like, oh yeah, you'll make millions.
Oh yeah. There you go.
He's like, what do I need to do? And I'm like, Nothing.
Yep.
He's like, all right.
See,
Just
my husband, we've done like live stream shows a lot, and he calls them podcasts. And podcasts, he's like, your video thing, whatever that, like he knows what it is, but he just can't get the words, and he's like, whatever the business word for it is. And I'm like, podcast? Like, he's like, yeah, that.
but God bless them. We love them.
Yeah, they try so hard. They try so hard.
So, do you work, like, does he work with you on a lot of stuff now still?
So he has a full-time job. He's a warehouse manager for a chemical company. But he's gotten very into working with me on the digital marketing agency. And for a long time, he was my assistant for some weddings.
Right.
When I was about 6 months in, my mom kind of realized that this was legitimately a thing, and it looked really fun. And I really feel like I got all my kind of planning skills from her. And so about 6 months into wedding planning, she really wanted in on it. And she's like, I can be your assistant. It'll be fun. We'll be a mother-daughter team. And so I had her for a while. But when he and I got married, it was a lot of like, if she wasn't available, he would kind of come along, and he got where he just sort of really knew how to do everything. He could kind of run them himself. And he he would basically work his full-time job and then come with me on like a Saturday to help plan a wedding. And so now that we're not doing weddings anymore, I don't know if he feels like he still has to be involved with my businesses, or if he just really actually enjoys it. But a lot of times, he'll come in sort of at the end of the day, and I'm still working in my office. And so he'll just kind of flop down. We have a second desk, and he'll flop down. And he's like, is there anything I can help you with? And I'm like, yes, here's 4 projects. Finish them in the next hour. Enjoy. Uh, and he does. He'll start working, and, he does things a little differently than I would do them, and maybe a little bit slower because he's not used to it as much. But yeah, he's definitely super helpful. And we're hoping maybe in the next few years to actually really kind of bring him on full time and just really do this together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you talked about, and like I had said before about how honest you are with stuff, and we had talked briefly before about one of your biggest obstacles in business being listening to what other people's opinions of you were. Can you talk a little bit about that, like how you sort of came to the realization that that was happening, and then what you kind of did to help get out of that mode? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in that.
Definitely, for sure. I think this is going to sound crazy, but ultimately the realization came from other people don't care. And it I really found that what I thought were other people's opinions were really just my interpretation of their opinion.
Right.
And I think a lot of times that's what we do. We get where we're like, oh, what is my mom going to think? Or what is my best friend going to think? Or what is my spouse going to think? And we sort of play this scenario in our head of what we think they're going to say and how we think they're going to feel. And more often than not, they don't care. And I'm sure, you have people in your life who care about you. They love you, your parents, your spouse, your friends, whatever. But the reality is, if you really want to start something or you really want to do something a certain way, they're ultimately probably not going to care. And if they do have a, pretty strict opinion about it, it's probably not going to last that long because, again, they don't care. People are so worried about their own lives, and especially if you've got like business friends, because those are the
Yeah.
ones I hear the most. Like, oh, I'm worried what, all these other business owners that I know will think. I'm worried what my Facebook friends will think. I don't know a few of my Facebook friends, but I got to the point where I was like, but what will they think? And at
Yeah.
some point you've got to realize that you don't even really know these people that well. Or, I mean, would they ask the same thing of you? If they
Right.
were starting something, would they be worried what you thought about it? And when I started looking at it that way, I realized that no, nobody would care what I had to say about it at all. And it really came for me when I had started the second business, and I had gotten to a point where I had all of these things I wanted to do. And I hit a place where I was like, but how will I introduce myself? And that's where just me calling myself a serial entrepreneur kind of came from. Because, I'd go to these networking events in the beginning and I'm like, oh, I'm a wedding planner. And then I added the virtual assistant company and I was like, okay, so now I guess I say I'm a wedding planner and a virtual assistant. And I was okay with that. But then I started introducing myself to some people or writing it on my bio. And all of a sudden you get these looks like, oh, you do both? Because it's confusing to people. A lot of people don't understand the concept of wanting to run multiple businesses or do multiple things. And I I kind of backtracked and I was like, oh, how do I introduce myself now? Because people are giving me weird looks and I don't want them to give me weird looks. And what are they thinking? They won't tell me what they're thinking. They just kind of nod and walk away. And I just didn't know what to do. And so I got to the point where, especially when we started looking into me speaking or doing coaching or starting the podcast, I was like, well, I can't introduce myself and be like, I'm a wedding planner turned virtual assistant, but I also have a podcast on the side and I do some coaching and some speaking and my life is just crazy. I can't introduce myself that way because people are literally just going to walk away. And so I just started saying, oh, I'm a serial entrepreneur. And then I noticed that that didn't help because then you get the looks like, you're a what?
What is that?
You do what now? And I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I have multiple businesses, except then they want you to tell them about all of your businesses. And I found myself in this same vicious circle of conversation where by the time I got to the second business, they're just looking at me like, oh, well, how does that work? How do you balance all of those things? And so it was sort of in that sort of transitioning period and trying to figure out how to introduce myself that I realized that the person making the biggest deal about it was me, because I was so worried about their face. I was so worried about what they were thinking when I introduced myself. Truth is, as soon as they walked away, they didn't care. They could have cared less what I did. Maybe they remember my name. Maybe they don't. Maybe we talk later. Maybe we don't. But they're moving on to somebody else and meeting somebody else. And if you ask them later, maybe they don't remember what I do. Maybe they're like, well, I remember she ran a wedding planning business and something else. I'm not sure what, but she's doing a lot of stuff. And that's what I found is people just didn't care. And I think, you've probably got some people in your life at some point who have a pretty strong opinion about something that you're doing. Fortunately for me, I had a supportive husband and I grew up with parents who were always the ones saying you can do anything you put your mind to. And God bless them, because every time I came up going, I'm going to add a new business, my dad would go, oh, cool. And then he'd just wait to see how it worked out. I mean, it was like, I think you can do it. I'm not sure if you're going to do it. So I'm just not going to say anything right now. My mom was always worried about, well, do you have enough time? And every single time I add something, even now that she knows I'm going to make it work, it's constantly like, well, how are you going to find time to do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. Calm down. And she's like, okay, sure. But she's super supportive. And maybe you don't have people like that in your life, but you've got to learn to just say, I'm going to do this for me, and know that eventually, somewhere down the line, they're going to realize that you're doing it for you. You're really successful at it. You really enjoy it. It's made you a better person or a happier person, or, helped you financially or whatever. And they're going to kind of pull back, and maybe they still don't like it, but they're probably not going to voice that to you as much. So if you can just get to that point where you realize that the worst opinion is usually your own. You're the hardest person on yourself. You're the one worried about what everybody else is thinking. You're the one really stopping yourself from doing things. If you can get to that place, then other people's opinions don't matter anymore.
And I think that's so true. I know, like, even for myself, one of the things I struggled the most with was worrying that people were going to say I was being selfish because my husband was working full time. And then, I was just at home, would get always, oh, she's just at home, not doing anything. And I decided that it really just, the way I look at it, totally made a difference on the way other people perceived it too. Because if anybody would say, oh, like, that's kind of selfish, I would say, yeah, it totally is. Isn't it awesome? Because the better I make myself, the better my family becomes.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I totally love being able to be selfish.
Yeah.
And yeah, but sometimes it's a hard thing. And even though I've been in business for over 20 years, for different ones, there's still that, every time I start something, I think, what am I getting myself into? Like, no, I have to do it. Like, and I just find if I sit with it for about a week, then all of a sudden, if it's still there and it's nagging me, I'm like, okay, time to take this
Yeah.
baby and grow it up.
Yeah, and I've gotten those questions too. Like, I've got super supportive parents, but I had some other family members who were like, "Oh, okay, how's that gonna work? Are you sure you want to do that? Like, you're really young. How do you run your own business?" And especially in the beginning, God knows, like I got right out of college and they're like, "A business? Okay, sure. How's that gonna work out?" And I've gotten those questions along the way, like, well, how does Luke feel about you like sitting at home in your sweatpants all day? And I'm like, he loves it. He loves my sweatpants. Like, and he does. He really loves that I'm there when he gets home and we don't work different shifts. And if he gets a day off, I'm able to say, I'll take the day off with you because I can
Yeah.
move some stuff around because I own my own business and it's awesome. And he looks forward to the idea of getting to come work with me full time and us getting to do this together. And, we can go on trips. It's, how much easier it is to travel when you only have to ask one boss if you
Yeah.
can get off. Like, it's so much easier. Like, my parents are constantly just like, well, how do you guys schedule this all the time? You go travel, you go do this. And I'm like, because Luke's boss is awesome and I work for myself. So, and there's so many things that are so much easier as an entrepreneur. And sure, there's things that you have to deal with. It's not made for everybody. You're going to go through a lot of hard things. But yeah, I got to the point where people would look at me and they were like, well, how do you manage all of your time? How do you manage multiple businesses? Why would you want to do that? And that's the one I've gotten the most is why would you want to run multiple things? And I'm like, because I like multiple things, because I'm human. And I don't think anybody was made to just do one thing. And that's the part that blows my mind is just because people are always like, well, I have this job and I love this job. Why would you want to have another job? And I'm like, because it's not a job to me.
Yeah.
Start wedding planning because it was a job. I started wedding planning because it was something I was good at. And yeah, I needed the money, but I didn't start it saying, oh, this is going to be my career. This is going to be the job that I go into work to do every day. I started it because I was like, okay, I need some cash while I figure out what my career is going to be. And this is something that I'm good at, that I like doing, that I could make some money on. And it just turned into a business. I started the second business because I loved actually running a business and I wanted to help other people with that. And it turned into a business. It's never been a job for me. I get really excited to come sit in my pink office every day in my comfy chair in my sweatpants if I want to and
Yep.
work. I love that if I'm not feeling well and I still want to get some work done, I can do it on a laptop from the couch. I love having that freedom and that makes it not a job to me. And I think a lot of people have strong opinions when they don't understand something. And nothing you can say is going to make them understand it. So you've just got to do whatever feels right to you, whatever you think is going to make you happy, and hope that eventually they can understand it. And if they don't, they'll keep their mouth shut. And that's all you can hope for.
Yeah. And I think so, like for me, surrounding myself with other like-minded entrepreneurs really helped because there were times where, you'd get stuck in a rut, especially when I moved, when I sold my retail stores and I was I moved back home and I found myself kind of slipping into bad habits and I mean, it was nothing new. I'd been working for a long time, but just getting back to working at home and trying to do that, I found having that support group around me of people that I could say, hey, I need help. Like somebody motivate me because
Yeah.
yeah. I'm on my 8th episode of a Netflix show and I'm stuck. I need some help. But yeah, I agree. Like when I think back of, I used to work in the government, and I remember sitting at my desk one day, and it was like a life-changing moment. And we used to actually have a bell that went off on breaks because everybody took a break at the same time. And
Right.
it was like herding cattle. The bell would go off, everybody would stand, and they'd go out. And I thought,
Right.
I can't do this for
No.
another 40 years. Like, this is just going to suck my soul out. And now, well, like when I think back on that, now when people are like, so what are you, I'm in my 40s. So now people are like, are you thinking about retirement? And I'm like, no,
No.
retirement is the farthest thing from my mind because it doesn't feel like work. Like I'm just
Right.
thinking, I just want to do this forever. Like I don't ever want to stop. So to me, I feel that I'm so much more fortunate than those people who are, clicking the clock and just waiting until they're done. I thought, this is the life, like to be able to find something that you want to do till the day you die instead of just do it until you can be like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. And I know there are some people who can go in and they work a corporate like 9 to 5 job and they love it. They love what they do.
Yeah.
Fine, they love that they're going to get to do it for 40 or 50 years and retire and whatever, and that life really works for them and they love that idea and that dream. That's great. That's just not for everybody. And I think, like I said, I just think people get strong opinions when they don't understand something. And I think a lot of times, especially if it's somebody who maybe kind of grew up in a more traditional family or they're a little older or anything like that, I think a lot of times it's just this mindset of, well, how could you not want a stable income? Well, how could you just not want to retire when you get to that age? Well, how can you not want, this, and this? And you're like, well, but I could make a stable income doing this thing over here. And if I love it so much, like you said, I won't want to retire. And I think there's just some people who are never going to understand that. And the longer you spend trying to change their mind, the less you're putting into your own pocket. The less work you're putting into your own business, the less time you're giving yourself to really build on that dream. And that's not to say that I've mastered it and I don't care about other people's opinions. It slips in all the time. And,
Absolutely.
I think constantly I talk about this and people ask this question about, well, how did you overcome that? You don't ever overcome it. This is just how you work on it because
Yeah.
you're never going to get to that place where nobody else's opinion bothers you. You may get to that place where strangers' opinions don't bother you. But if you've got a mom or a father-in-law or a spouse or whatever who they're really close to you, you love these people and you used to value their opinion and they're the ones being hard on you, it's going to take a lot longer to work through that. And for those types of people, I'm like all about having a conversation. Like you need to sit down with them and say, "Look, it hurts me when you say this because this is why it matters so much to me. And when you tell me that it doesn't matter or you don't think it's going to work or that it's a stupid idea, it really genuinely hurts me because I think I'm good at it and I think I can make it work. And even if I don't, I just really want to try. And I wish you could support that." And you would be amazed when you sit down and say those things, how it changes. And it doesn't always change right away. You may be dealing with somebody who gets really defensive and they don't think they're doing anything wrong and they're annoyed at you that you won't listen to them. But it'll kind of seep in a little bit and it'll start making them think like, oh, well, they came to me and they were really kind and they were really professional about it and they didn't yell at me and they didn't jam their opinion down my throat. They just told me how they felt. Maybe I should back off just a little bit. I still don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to back off just a little. And then eventually they're more open-minded to watching you make it work. And I mean, you just got to get to that point where you can say, I'm going to do this for me, despite what you think of it. And it's not going to happen all the time. People are still going to sing you a lot. Some things are just going to get through, but the more often you can do it, the easier it becomes.
So tell us a little bit more about your digital marketing company, because I know that is such a huge thing. And like, I have a son, he's 12, and I mean, he's just growing up in that age, right? Where to him, I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family, like government workers, military. That was my sort of family life. But he's grown up always seeing myself and my husband own businesses. And
Right.
to him, internet is a business. Like, he sees so much potential, sort of in it. So it's such a big thing right now. So tell us a little bit more about what you do, and maybe a little tip for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, when I started the company, it was more like virtual assistant work. So for me, it was just like, how can I help other business owners run their business? And in the very beginning, it was a lot of like helping people check their emails and respond to clients. And, it sort of developed over time. So most of what I was getting in the beginning was, I need help with social media, because we all do, right?
Yeah.
And so, I had gotten where I was pretty good at Instagram, and I was learning Pinterest, and so I took in as much information as I possibly could, and started growing my own accounts and started working with clients and growing their accounts. And so when we sort of transitioned it into this digital marketing agency, it's really a lot of strategy. So it's a lot of working with clients on website design, on social media management, like Instagram and Pinterest, not just managing it, but really giving them a strategy on how to grow their account, how to reach their customers, how to find those people that they really want to work with and convince them to book. It's a lot of design work and a lot of strategy work paired together. And I've just loved it, because I feel like now I help business owners more with running their business than I ever did in the beginning. Because, I was always like, I want to help other business owners run their business because I love business. I love teaching people how to run a business. And I was really checking a lot of people's emails and responding to their clients. And I'm like, I know I'm taking it off of their hands and saving them time, and that's helping their business, but I don't feel like I'm helping them with their business. And so now I get to actually work with people to create a strategy for their content, figure out how to market what they're doing, grow their accounts and find their customers, and really kind of teach them more about what I know. And so it's been so cool, and I love it so much. But one of my biggest tips, because I find myself constantly saying this to all of my clients, whether it's, building a website or growing Instagram, or you're getting on Pinterest or whatever, is be consistent. That's always the biggest tip. And we hear that a lot from a lot of different people, but I think we hear it and we don't always know what it means. But you've got to be consistent with every single thing that you're putting out into the world. So if I go to your Instagram, I should be able to go to your Facebook after that and go to your Pinterest after that and know that it's you. Without reading the name, I should be able to know that it's your account because I saw you on Instagram. Same thing for your website. If I go to your website and I look at the homepage and I scroll through your about page and read all about you, and then I go to Instagram and I read the captions and they don't sound like you at all, that's not consistency. And there's a lot of different ways that being consistent presents itself. You need to be consistent in the fact that you're posting regularly, you're updating things regularly. And if regularly for you is once a month or 4 times a day, it doesn't matter as long as it's consistent for you and for your audience and they know what to expect. And I think that's our bit. I usually, when people come to me and they're like, I need a strategy for Instagram, or I don't know how to use Pinterest, or I need a new website, the first problem we identify is a lack of consistency in some way. And so that's always my biggest tip, is just find a way to be consistent, whatever that looks like for you.
And I think that is such an important tip, because for me, that was my biggest thing. I'd heard it all the time. You need to be consistent, need to be consistent. But I didn't have an idea of what that was to look like for me. I was trying to be consistent with everybody else. I was trying
Yeah.
to I'm like, I have to post every day. Like, how am I going to ever manage to do that? And yeah, once I kind of let go of that and realized I have to decide what consistent means to me and
Yeah.
what I'm able to do so that I don't feel like it's just another thing, kind of on my to-do list. I love that tip. I absolutely love that tip.
And it's funny how that ties back into other people's opinions. You need to stop listening to what everybody else is telling you to do. If you go look up articles on like how often should I post on Instagram, everything is going to tell you once a day at least. Like you should be consistently posting every day. I don't know about you guys, but I really like my weekends. And I'll post on Instagram on weekends. It's not that I won't do it. It's that I'm not going to spend every day of every weekend sitting around going, oh, it's time to post on Instagram. I gotta make sure I get this done. And I think if you plan things out in advance, it makes it a lot easier. But you don't have to post every day. You can find your customers, you can grow an audience, you can captivate people with your captions, you can grow an account without posting every day. I know, I've done it. And I feel like we're so caught up in what everybody else is doing. Everybody else says to do this. All of these big influencers that I follow say to do this. All of these people I know that make millions of dollars say to do this. And their advice is great. I'm not discounting their advice because maybe it's what worked for them. And maybe it'll work for a lot of people listening to them. But just because they're saying it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You can try it, but if it's not working and you're starting to feel frustrated with Instagram or burn out on Pinterest or you hate Facebook now all of a sudden or whatever, then it's obviously not working for you. And that's a sign that you need to step back. You need to say, okay, once a day is not working. Let me try every other day. Let me see how that works. Okay, I've found that my biggest frustration is posting on weekends. So I'm just going to cut out weekends and just post on weekdays. Or, my best posting times are all at night, but I don't want to work at night. I don't want to focus on this at night. So I'm just going to post them right before I leave the office, right before I finish working. That way it's like as late in the afternoon as possible. Make it work for you. We're all so worried about algorithms and trying
Yeah.
to change ourselves and change our business to make it work with the algorithm. If we all just did what we wanted to do, the algorithm wouldn't matter anymore. It really wouldn't, because everybody would just be posting what they really wanted to post when they wanted to post it, and it wouldn't matter. You know, I'm not saying the algorithm would change, but I personally feel like it would. I feel like
Yeah.
Instagram would have to ultimately say, okay, nobody gives a crap about their posting times anymore. So, we're just going to update this so that everybody gets the same amount of attention, and they're probably never going to do that exactly. But if we all just didn't care, then it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. And I find it's hard to compare. Like, I have a friend who is a social media coach.
Mhm.
And she loves it. And I remember sitting there one day and we had ordered food. We were out at a restaurant together. And I'm like halfway done my meal. She's still taking pictures. And she's like, all right, you're not going to take a photo of your food? And I was like,
No, I
no.
want to eat it. Yeah.
And then, I remember sitting there and thinking, well, like maybe I should be doing stuff like that. And, I kind of worked myself up a little bit and I thought, no, because you know what? That's just not me. Like,
No.
I don't really care what I'm eating. Like, it was good. And every now and then, I do it, but I just realized that it didn't seem, it's like you said, it didn't seem like it's so much of a job if I just do what I'm passionate about. If something strikes me and I'm like, I want to share this with people, or I want to, this just strikes me as a good quote, or, this was a fun picture. I find what ended up happening for me was when I put the passion back into it, instead of kind of making it more methodical, I started getting more followers. I started getting more, like, people were
Yeah.
paying more attention because I found that almost leached through to them, that
Mhm.
that it was coming out as me, that I wasn't trying, like you said, I wasn't trying to, beat that algorithm. I was just like, hey, this was fun. Check it out, kind of thing.
Yeah. And, I'm not saying don't plan out your content. I'm not saying don't have a strategy, don't research hashtags. I'm not saying any of that. I help people with social media strategy. So I'm 100% like, look for the right hashtags.
Yeah.
If I think you should know when your best posting times are, because if you know that 11 in the morning gets you a lot of engagement and you're working at 11 in the morning and you can post at 11 in the morning, great, do that. Why would you just try to post when it's not going to work for you? That would be stupid. But if your best posting time is like 9 o'clock at night and you're like, I'm getting in bed at 9 o'clock at night, or I'm hanging out with my husband watching a show and I don't want to worry about it, then don't. You know, Plan it out, have a strategy, make a plan, but be willing to deviate from the plan if it's not working for you. So, I'm all about really doing your research, really making a marketing plan, a content plan, all of that stuff. But you've got to go back in and tweak that plan to where it works best for you. Because you can plan out all day long, but if you're burnt out in 2 months, you're going to quit planning because you're going to quit caring. You're going to quit posting in general. You're going to move on to something else. And how is that helping your business? If all of a sudden you're not on Instagram anymore because you hate it with a passion, how does that help you? It doesn't help you at all. You're way better off just posting when you want to post than not posting anything because you hate it so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's true. And I found that too, that correlates not only to social media, but to a lot of other stuff in business too. Like I
Absolutely.
find I always try to pick the sort of the time of least resistance, I say, the one that is not going to cause me too much stress. And then what I find is just a natural progression that if I say, okay, I'm gonna post my podcast, I'm gonna do it every 2 weeks because I know it's not going to stress me out too much. I'm not going to be worrying about it. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'm really backing up with episodes here. And so now I can find that I can go, a lot more. And I found my social media was like that too. I really kind of said, I think this is going to work for me. And then as I started doing that on a regular basis, and like you said, being consistent with it, I found it was easier to move to more times and to say,
Yeah,
I think I want to go to weekly because I'm finding this easy and it was fun. It wasn't that like,
exactly.
ugh, I got to get this done
Yeah.
before I do anything else.
You just have to start. Whatever it is, you just have to start it out. But you've just, like I said, got to be willing to deviate from that plan. So if for you, you start out slow, which God bless you, because I can't start anything slow. I am like full steam ahead. I'm gonna post every day. I'm gonna post twice a day, maybe. I'm crazy. But if you're like me, you've got to be willing to take a step back and say, okay, this isn't working. I've got to slow down. And if you're like you, where you kind of start off a little slower because you're like, I'm going to give myself time. And then all of a sudden you find yourself with all of this extra content or, whatever it is in business that you're doing, then you can speed up a little bit. You can pick it up a little bit. And that's great. It works great either way, but you've got to be willing to adjust. And maybe that means making an adjustment depending on the season that you're in. I think that's the part we get stuck on is I feel like we're like, well, I used to be able to post once a day. I used to be able to put out a podcast a week. I used to be able to do this. Okay, but used to doesn't work anymore. You know, we talk constantly about algorithm changes, but we're not willing to change ourselves. Why is that? Why can we sit there and be like, oh, well, Instagram updated this and Pinterest made this change and this is what we do now on social media, but we're not willing to look at inwards and look at ourselves and look at our schedule and say, okay, I made this change. So this is what I have to do now. And we get so stuck on saying, well, this is what I used to do. This is what used to work for me. What used to work for you doesn't work for you in the future. You've got to adapt. You've got to change. And you've got to change not based on what everybody else is doing, but based on what you need right now, today.
And I agree with that. I tell any client that I'm working with, like on collaborations and stuff, I always say to them, you got to stop thinking as change as something negative. Change is exciting. And as long as you keep it in your head that, oh my God, something's changing, this is awesome. It makes it a little less scary to venture into it because it becomes something that's exciting, not something that's scary or or anything like that. So that's awesome.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast, because I love it, but I want my listeners to know a little bit more about what you do and the guests that you have and sort of
Yeah.
what your vision is of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Females on Fire. And I interview other women in business who have a particular area of skill or expertise that they just want to share their advice on. So we have mostly business related topics, but every once in a while you'll get kind of more what I call lifestyle advice, just because it's about, motivation or authenticity or something that's kind of more on the personal development side versus just business. And that's definitely what I set out for it to be, because I feel like if you're running a business and you're not growing as a business owner, you're not running a good business.
Yeah.
So to me, there have to be some of those episodes where it's more about you and less about your business. But we do talk about business a lot. It's been great. We've had amazing guests. Every once in a while, I get really fired up about something. And so I'll throw in a solo episode where it's mostly just me talking. But it's been incredible. It's been so great. And we've got a ton of guests lined up. It comes out every week on Tuesdays. And people always ask me, like, where do you see it going? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I
Just
just,
let it go.
yeah, like I said, I started it for me. I started it as a passion project where I just wanted to connect with other women in business. And through the podcast, I've learned a lot. Somebody will come in and they'll talk about email marketing. And I'm like, I feel like my email marketing is good. And so I've got some questions to ask them and the interview goes really great, but they say something in there and I'm like, I didn't know that. I got to
Yeah.
write that down. I got to listen back to this later. And so I'm constantly learning from these incredible women who have really honed in on what they're good at, and what they really know how to do and what they love to do. And it's just been awesome. And for now, I'm like, we've got a ton of episodes ready to go and I'm still doing interviews and I love doing it. I don't know what it's going to look like a year from now. I don't know if it'll get way bigger or if I'll kind of get to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done now. I don't know. So I don't know where it's going to go going forward, but I'm excited about whatever that is.
Yeah. And that's a good way to do it. Like yeah, I love it. You had a great episode. I think it was, I want to say it was like episode 29 on testimonials. And I
Yeah.
loved that episode so much because I find one of the biggest struggles that people have is they'll always ask people for testimonials and they're like, yeah, absolutely. Because of course it's like putting a reference on a resume, right? You don't put
Yep.
people who are going to, oh, she's horrible. I hated her, but I got so much out of that episode. So I want to thank you so
Good.
much for putting that episode on. But because I'd never thought of it, they'd
Yeah.
had given a tip about, creating a questionnaire that people could fill out, because it's a lot easier for people to, fill out a questionnaire and just answer some questions than to sort of come
Absolutely.
up with this testimonial by themselves. So, but there's so many, like you had one about being multi-passionate
Mhm.
entrepreneur and overcoming feeling like a failure. And there's so many episodes that I just love. So
Good,
um,
good.
I enjoy it so much. A long time listener,
Yeah,
as they
thank
say.
you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, literally, I've gotten a few of the episodes where somebody like came to me and pitched this idea and said, I'd love to be on your podcast and I'd love to talk about this. And I was like, oh, that would be really good. But for the most part, it's been me saying, okay, when I was starting out or even now, what do I struggle with?
Yeah.
And where did I have trouble in the beginning? And whatever that answer is, that's the episode. And so then I'm like, okay, this is the episode I need to do. I got to find somebody who knows this thing, whatever it is. So testimonials for sure was, I found Christine was a copywriter. And for me, I literally was sitting there like, okay, I had a lot of trouble as a wedding planner, starting out as a virtual assistant, getting client testimonials. Like that was a real struggle for me. And I kind of looked around and I was like, I don't know that I've heard another I'm not saying it's not out there, but I don't know that I've heard another podcast actually talk about how to get more testimonials. You always hear about how to get more clients, but testimonials is like the best thing you can have to get more clients. And we've all struggled once or twice with getting those. So who can I find that's like an expert in this thing to talk about it? And I found Christine, and I was so excited. And that's really how every episode has kind of come into existence. It's just me going, okay, what do I suck at? Or what did I suck at? And
Yeah.
what did I struggle with? And where did I need the most help? And it results in a great episode every time. So I'm so overjoyed that this actually kind of came to be a thing. Cause like I said, I started it for me, but I was always like, if it can help somebody else, that's awesome. And now we get tons of messages from women listening who are like, this is my favorite podcast, or I'm learning everything about business from this podcast. And in my head, I'm like, oh Lord, that's kind of scary for me, but okay, sure. Like, and we've gotten just so much support and a pretty steady listener base. And I love our listeners because it just makes me want to bring them even more. And, I've started asking like, okay, what are you guys struggling with? We have a Facebook group, and I'm constantly posting in there, like, what would you rather see, this or this? What are you struggling with right now? What questions can we answer for you? And we've gotten great feedback on that. That's turned into some really good episodes. So I'm excited. I'm just super excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great job. I love it.
Thank you.
So now at the end of all of your episodes, you
Oh,
always do a lightning round. So I thought it would be really fun having you on the show if I did the lightning round on you, because you ask the same guests all the time. So we're going to do the lightning round for you. So it's always weird when you're on the other side of the mic, but
weird. Yeah.
I love your lightning round every time. So we're going to have all the links that you're going to be able to find Hayley everywhere. So you're going to want to listen to all of her episodes and you'll hear all of these. But these are the questions you asked, so I'm going to ask them to you. So,
all right, let's go.
All right. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Check my phone. I'm the worst. I'm the absolute worst. And every single time a woman comes on the podcast and she says, I check my phone, I'm like, yes, I'm not the only one, because it's bad. I know I should get up and, do my morning routine and meditate and all it, but I don't. I check my phone. I'm the worst. I really am. And I'll spend 10 minutes just scrolling Facebook, scrolling Instagram, checking my messages, whatever, so I don't have to get up, because I am not a morning person at all.
And that's good, because you're in a career where you don't have to be. You could be any kind of person.
Exactly.
What is the last book that you read?
So Jordan Lee Dooley, I absolutely love her. If you don't follow her, you should. She's amazing. But she just came out with a book. It actually releases on May 14th. So I don't know when this will air, but May 14th. And it's called Own Your Everyday.
Okay.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's all about, finding your purpose and overcoming the pressure to have to prove yourself to everybody, which really ties into what we were talking about today, which is awesome. And I was on her book launch team, so I read it just to support her, but it turned out to be probably one of my favorite books, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good.
Oh, that's awesome. What is one thing that you recommend to everyone?
This is hard. For business, probably HoneyBook. I use HoneyBook for all of my clients. I swear by it. I'm partnered up with them now and just love it. You can do everything in there, contracts, invoices, track your time, manage your clients, all the things. And so I pretty much swear by it. Non-business related, take a walk. Just go out and take a walk in the middle of the day. I still get to that point, even though I've got human interaction through the podcast now, I still get to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm getting way too stuck in my head on things. I'm getting a little burnout today. I got to get up. I got to get moving. And so I just, take my dog for a walk around the neighborhood, and it helps so much. And most of the time we're like running back to the house because I'm like, I just thought of an idea and I have to write it down. So just take a walk, take a break, do whatever you got to do to get moving and loosen up and let the ideas come.
I do the same thing. Actually, now I walk with one of those little like recorders.
Yeah.
Because Yeah, because I'll always like come up with ideas and then I'm like, I'm not going to remember this by the time I get home. So
Yep.
yeah, water bottle, dog, recorder.
Yep.
So
That's smart.
those
That's
are my
smart.
walking things. So,
That's smart.
and what is your favorite quote or the best piece of advice you've ever given or
So
ever been given?
I'm gonna do my favorite quote, and I absolutely love this, but it's from Rick Warren, and it's, if you live for the approval of others, you will die by their rejection. And that is my absolute favorite quote. It has been for a long time. The first time I heard it, I think I lost my breath. It kind of knocked it out of me, And it goes great with what we were talking about today. But for me, it's just a reminder that if I am constantly living for what everybody else tells me I have to do or I have to be, then I'm going to die by that. They're going to be the ones that dictate my entire life. They're going to be the ones that dictate how I run everything, and I'm never going to get to find that thing that really wakes me up in the morning, that really gets me fired up and makes me passionate about something. And so it's just a reminder to really find who you are and find what makes you happy and do whatever that is.
I love that. And that's just perfect for exactly what we were talking about today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was so fun to connect with you and share some ideas and laugh with you. And I was just really excited to have you on the show.
Aw, thank you. Thank you. It's been so much fun, and I so appreciate the time because it's been great.
That's awesome. So you can go and find Hayley on Instagram at Hayley Luckadoo. So make sure you check her out. And we're going to also have some links to everywhere else that you can find her on our blog for this episode. So just head over to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blog at the top of the page and you're going to see Hayley's lovely face. So just click there and you'll be able to connect with her all over. And you're also going to want to make sure that you head over to her podcast, Females on Fire, and subscribe there. And because she's so super amazing, she's also offering everybody, all of our Foxy listeners, 20% off at her online store. So head to hayleyluckadoo.net and you can use the promo code FOXTALKS. And you have some great products in there. I was snooping already, so I'm excited to head over and grab myself a little something too.
Good. Well, thank you again. This has been awesome.
And just before you leave this episode, if you all could take just a few minutes to leave us a review, it is so appreciated. You can also message us on pretty much every platform you get social on. Every comment and interaction just means so much to me, and I thank you all for them, and they are one of the highlights to my day, so I always look forward to hearing from you guys. So get out there today, and as Hayley always says, dream big. I want to thank all you Foxy listeners once again for taking time from your day to stop and spend some time with me. It means so much, and I thank you for that. And as I tell you each and every episode, remember to have fun, because if you aren't having fun, why are you doing it?